Well, okay, let me just say that Christina, okay, is a true historical pioneer, because in the 1980s, she was out there when there was no context at all for opposition to the feminist establishment, taking an incredible amount of flack, in academic conferences and so on, while I was struggling to get published. My first book, Sexual Personae, was published in 1990, but had been rejected by 7 publishers. So it was a long delay there. So no sooner was my book published than Christina wrote to me, and we have been firm allies, fellow Amazon warriors, or ever since.
And I was thinking maybe something was wrong with me, because I would read these feminist texts. The chair of my department had asked me to teach a course in feminist theory, and I thought, oh, well, I'm a feminist, a theorist, and I sent away for the various texts. And it was all sort of warmed over Marxism. They had crossed out class and put gender, very angry at our society, and saying impossibly silly things. And so I thought, all right, I'll go to the American Philosophical Association and challenge the nonsense and defend reasonable feminism, but take exception to the madness. And I gave a paper at the APA, and typically when you give a paper like that, you argue, and then you go out for drinks. We did not go out for drinks. These women, while I was speaking, were hissing and stamping their feet. It was like, I don't want to say that it was a struggle session out of the Cultural Revolution, but I will say this, I was excommunicated from a religion I didn't know existed. Then, one day, I find in the New York Times this vision of brilliance, and then you were about to give a talk at MIT. And so one rainy night, I go over to MIT, and the room is packed.
There were like thousands of people.
Thousands of people
had to
get
the Boston police.
And demonstrators. Yeah. They were called PIPs, people in black, and they were attacking rape culture even then.
Yeah.
And you took the stage, and I think that you deprogrammed thousands of people in a single lecture.
It was incredible. It was incredible.
It was an incredible event.
People turned out, because this was before the web, and there was no forum for any kind of alternate viewpoint in the culture at that time. And I was standing for free thought, free speech, right? And all of a sudden, and people just streamed. It was an incredible night, because half the audience was hissing and booing, half of them were cheering, etc. The whole thing was improv, and the text of it, the MIT lecture, is in my first essay collection, Sex, Art, and American Culture. Yeah. But let me just say that our generation of the 1960s was a generation that was breaking free from authority and from old patterns of thinking, etc. But it's amazing to me, how one of the major liberation movements, the women's movement, could have so become an agent of a kind of Stalinist thought control and a dogma, and a kind of policing of dogma that is very much like the sort of the ill-tempered Irish nuns, that I was clashing with in religious education, in the late 1950s and early 1960s. And I thought, oh my God, I've run into the nuns again. The nuns have simply, they just left the nunnery and they've gone into Gloria Steinem-style establishment feminism.
Right, constantly aggrieved. I've never seen people more prone to being offended, and they're sort of grievance collectors.
Well, I think most of them, in my experience, seem to have a grudge against men, that goes way back. Now, I did not experience all this oppression by men. I came from a very vigorous Italian-American culture. 5 of my uncles went to World War II. My father was a paratrooper and so on. All I saw was admirable men. That's all I saw. So these people like Gloria Steinem, right, who came from this horrendously unstable, background. Kate Millett, who's been in and out of institutions. She's had one breakdown after another, and so on. These women with this grievance, this hatred of men, somehow took over second wave feminism. It was not a part of first wave feminism.
Catherine McKinnon, imagine her past.
Oh, Catherine McKinnon. How about Andrea Dworkin?
And Andrea
what a
Dworkin.
mess she was. Oh my!
Dysfunctional personalities.
She was a monster.
The theories.
Yeah, just like raving and on, and this like hallucinatory hellfire has been transferred over to men. And this is what's been injected into our young women. It's an absolute outrage the way feminism has been hijacked by this kind of male blaming, male bashing
What is that about? I mean, feminism for me meant that we could be as wild and crazy as boys, or do whatever we wanted to do, enter fields, and to learn from I thought, women finally achieved equality in education. That means that you read the great philosophers, you study the great thinkers, and then you assume that there will be women geniuses, but they will have the advantage of that education, which women at one point did not have. As soon as we get this kind of equality, what do? They start tearing down these figures.
They want the women's curriculum, and let's find all the undiscovered women geniuses, the undiscovered female Michelangelo. Well, they've been looking now for decade after decade. They have not found any female Michelangelo. There isn't one. Yes, there isn't one. Okay, the quality of my work comes from my admiration of the great masculine tradition. Okay, yes, women were shut out. So what? You incorporate, you assimilate the greatness of the past. I believe in greatness. That was thrown out. That was also thrown out in the 70s. We can't have greatness. No.
As soon as they found out they couldn't find these hidden, then they said, okay, they started
then there's no
questioning
greatness.
The standards, and there was a new, female epistemology, women's ways of knowing. It was all nonsense.
Yes.
But
identity politics is what really knocked the bottom out of the liberation movements of the 70s. Everything suddenly balkanized. Okay? What I was looking for, I feel that my solution was truly radical, to abolish departmental structure, to go to a more general vision of the humanities in the way they had at Oxford and Cambridge, where you're reading in certain areas in a kind of improvisational, eclectic manner. Instead, they immediately said, we have these new liberation movements, and our colleges don't look like the future. Therefore, let's have women's studies. Okay, let's have African American studies. Let's have Native American studies, and so on. So everything was split, and then what happened is these became political fiefdoms. People just threw money at them as a kind of a PR move. The administrators wanted to show that they were doing something for liberal politics. Yeah, and so that's what we've ended up with. These political cells. A women's studies, gender studies program that does not have biology included in it, okay? We have people graduating with MAs and PhDs in gender studies who have never opened a book of biology, cannot tell you anything about hormones or
deconstructed biology. They're above,
they don't believe in it, okay? This is the mess we're in right now, okay? The absolute ignorance, the incompetence, the mediocrity, okay, of these faculty members.
We blew the whistle, and
we have been warning. If they listened to us 25 years ago,
and we won the battle. By the time it was over, not just us, there were many people conducting this battle, but in the early 90s, we had the best arguments, and the New York Times was on our side, New York Magazine, Salon, and it didn't matter because they won the assistant professorships, and then edited out the sort of liberal feminists, the pro-sex feminists, we were edited out or treated as backlash.
Exactly.
So young women don't read
Christina's works are never included in any curriculum, okay?
You would not know.
No, you would never know that there was any dissent to the prevailing women's establishment view, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, you see, one of the problems was that really smart and talented people did not go into women's studies.
Exactly.
Okay? So they were second and third raters right from the start, okay? There are people looking for a dogma, okay? It's an absolute shambles. The way they threw together women's studies like this. Let's have women's studies. Okay, well, all right. You're a woman, okay? You can do it. Women's studies, okay? That's what they did. They just hired women, any woman. That's what Princeton did. Princeton went on a shopping expedition. Went to Rutgers. I'll take you.
Oh,
women's
these careers.
studies. Now we don't have to think about it anymore, okay? And that's the ruination, okay, of gender theory. That's how it happened.
But the identity politics was there from the beginning, so they began policing one another.
Yeah.
So over the years, it became more and more. We don't even have women's studies anymore. They have renamed it now women and gender, because it's thought to be sexist even to
and the gender theory is coming from post-structuralism, okay?
Right.
If you want to see an expose of that, read my Junk Bonds and Corporate Raiders, my attack on Foucault, okay, from 25 years ago. Yeah. Foucault is the new god, okay? They got rid of Jehovah and now they have Foucault, okay?
Right.
Today, that's all, right? So all these gender, and all this like gobbledygook, okay? they're imitating French discourse that they can't even read in the original, most of these people, okay? You cannot believe the low level of gender theory discourse that's now leaked into the media and into the administration, into
because
politics.
The majors, the people that majored in this and read Derrida and Lacan, they're now journalists, feminist bloggers.
Not only journalists, they're in the regulatory agencies, okay, and they're forcing all this gender stuff, okay, into school districts. And the Title IX is like, speak of a Stalinist, takeover of the universities. This Title IX thing is an absolute atrocity that's going on, okay? You have these kangaroo courts, okay? Faculty being brought up on charges in front of an administrator who's obeying a command from Washington. I mean, we're talking about...
And it's all done in secret? And no accountability.
And no lawyers. You can't have a lawyer.
And there are over 100 young men that are now suing. And I've read some of these cases, and you read the cases, and you can't believe this could happen in contemporary America.
And the faculty lay down flat to let this happen. Okay?
See,
all the great leftists.
Where are the faculty?
The great leftists who are always talking about surveillance and all this stuff from Foucault, they were absolutely castrated when they were confronted with an actual takeover of their own universities.
Right, by this network of apparatchik administrators, the administrative state.
Absolutely. An octopus. Yes, absolutely. Okay,
but where do you think this leaves young men today in education?
Alienated. Okay, obviously it's a terrible disturbance from in sexual relations. This is a horrible thing that's happening to romantic relationships in this culture.
It's all policed and monitored. It looks to me as though the way society used to police and monitor the lives of gay people, now it's moved to heterosexual males. They're under constant criticism, surveillance, and their normal sexuality has been pathologized. And so the fact that boys get in terrible trouble, my friend was in a fraternity at, I won't say what school, but they sent out little, invitations that had a silhouette of a sexy woman. They were practically thrown out of school because they liked an image of an attractive, beautiful woman. So this is, for males now, heterosexual males is treated as some kind of, behavior that has to be corrected, and they should be punished for.
Well, I take it as a career college teacher, I take the very extreme view, 1960s view, okay, that college administrations should absolutely stay out of students' lives, okay, surveillance of their speech and of their conduct, except when something rises to the level of a crime, in which case it should be reported to the police, okay? So all of this maneuvering and diversity training and sexual harassment sensitivity training, all that stuff, this has to stop, okay? This is real, this is sick. It's Kafkaesque. It's like out of a nightmare, Twilight Zone world. Okay, how have we tolerated this? Okay, and so young people, okay, many products of prosperous upper middle class homes seem to like it. That's what I cannot understand as a 1960s person. They want the parental proxies. They want the helicopter parents. They want to feel they're all social media, now and so on. They want to feel this presence, the parental eye. My generation of the 1960s, when I arrived in college in 1964, okay, there were parietal rules in place so that the women in my dorm had to sign in at 11 o'clock at night. The men could run free, okay? So it was my generation that rose up, okay, and said we want to be treated equally and we want freedom, okay? The colleges said the world is a dangerous place, okay? You could be attacked, you could be raped, okay? We said, okay, give us the freedom to risk rape. Freedom is much more important, okay, than protection and safety, okay? And that's what young people have given up today. They want reassurance, they want the parental eye on them, okay? And they've given up freedom. And with personal freedom goes freedom of thought, okay? And that's why we're not going to get anything interesting, okay, in intellect or the arts, okay, from a generation that has been coddled and infantilized the way this generation has been. Okay.
Well, I am gonna give them a chance in this sense that because I'm on social media a lot and Twitter and video, I hear from a lot of dissenters and free spirits and kids who, without politics, I mean, they just thought their way out of it very quickly, and they're not organized in a sense of a big free speech uprising, but they're there and they're starting to find their voice. So I'm thinking that we may begin to hear from them, and I think they're going to be defectors, just as some of the best anti-Marxists were former true believers. I think we're going to have a generation of kids. I'm hoping, maybe this is wishful thinking, but I think there are going to be some brilliant kids who are going to realize they were cheated out of a serious education when they were fed, at Princeton and Yale. They had to read these third-rate French theorists, or even worse, the feminist interpreters. And that there was this generational swindle, that they had professors who themselves had read great works of literature or philosophy, and that they withheld those works and gave them this, this inferior material. They're going to realize what happened and begin to write about it and perhaps reclaim.
Well, it's really started at the level of public school education. Okay, I've been teaching now for like 46 years as a classroom teacher, and I have felt the slow devolution of the quality of public school education in the classroom. Now, people who teach at the elite schools are just getting products of private schools and the best, the creme de la creme, and so on. They're not going to feel what I do as a teacher at an art school, where I get a huge variety. People have different majors in performing arts and graphic arts and so on, and they come from a wide variety of backgrounds. So I really know what has happened. Okay, what has happened is these young people now getting to college have no sense of history of any kind, no sense of history, no world geography, no sense, of the violence and the barbarities of history, So they think that the whole world has always been like this, a kind of nice, comfortable world where you can go to the store and get orange juice and milk, and you can turn on the water and the hot water comes out, right? They have no sense whatever, of destruction, of the great civilizations that rose and fell and so on, and how, and how arrogant people get when they're in a comfortable civilization, etc. Right? So they now are being taught to look around them to see defects in America, which is the freest country in the history of the world, and so on, and to feel, that somehow America is the source of all evil in the universe. It's because they've never been exposed to the actual evil of the history of humanity. They know nothing.
No, it's quite true. And right now, the fashion with the identity politics is intersectionality. This is all the rage. And the premise of this theory, it's the idea that all the oppressions intersect with one another and form this matrix of oppression. And so young people in a typical gender studies class now learn that they inhabit a society that is this matrix of oppression, and depending on your identity, you might be advantaged, so you have unearned privilege, or you might be burdened because of your race, or maybe you have disability, or your gender, or your preference, and on and on. But underneath it all is this assumption that the United States is a white supremacist, imperialist, capitalist, patriarchal, oppressive society. And in order to liberate ourselves, we have to, well, I don't even know what they want to do, because it's all, maybe just blame one another and have little feuds on social media and on campus. And the fact that students are open to that view, that the society that they inhabit, that allows them to go to this beautiful university, is a matrix of misery.
Right.
But they've been taught that now through maybe as early as junior high school. They start getting this very distorted view of the world. So we have to hope it changes.
Well, the way they're taught, as far as I can see, all they've been taught is no bullying. Do not bully. Right? You should be a nice person. Because people are really nice. And that really is that's the answer really to international affairs and geopolitics.
Yeah.
If we're nice, they'll be nice. And if they're not being nice now, it's because we weren't nice to them in the past. So, I mean, it is so naive. You cannot believe the naivety. And we're heading into this very murky future of the world with terrorism on the rise. And I don't know how this generation is going to cope with that. I don't think they have the ability to cope with it. And so I think we're heading towards something like late Rome, where you have a Praetorian Guard, or you have the military kind of in charge of politics and throwing one emperor out and putting another one in, like that. So it concerns me, because
I think the Vandals are we've got ISIS,
I've been saying
and we have the Chinese, but they have an excess of 1 million men in the military.
Yes.
So we get these hyper-masculine
Yes.
societies.
Exactly.
And we're, worried about
yes, and we're into like
toxic masculinity
yes,
and the Ivy
let's
League.
blend. Let's do like gender bending things. Meanwhile, you have like these, the Vandals and the Huns on the on the borderlines of the empire, etc. Okay, all right. To me, it's like one of my favorite movies, The Time Machine. Okay, which is a movie from my high school years. Of H.G. Wells' novel, a futuristic novel, and you have humanity has split at the end, okay, into the Morlocks. Okay, these are horrible or industrial. They're under kind of subterranean enslavers, and then you have the Eloi. The Eloi are all very gender bending, and they're like the boys are very girlish, and they're all kind of they're eating fruits, and they're lying, and they're enjoying life, and everything's very hedonistic. There's a girl drowning. Look, a girl is drowning. They can't do anything about it. And that's what our universities, our elite schools, are turning out. The Eloi.
Oh, you're right. Oh, you're right. Yes. Well, there we are.
Yep.
So, and then we have on campus this new regime of protecting students from microaggressions and trigger warnings and safe spaces. Yeah. Where did this come about? I mean, how did this come about? And even at University of Santa Cruz, very enterprising professor of psychology has come up with a microaggression app, a mobile app. And so you can immediately report if you overhear someone making an off-color joke or something. It's almost all young women who have volunteered to use the app, because probably not that many guys left at University of Santa Cruz. Right. And they're policing one another. It's an anonymous surveillance system that would have made the Stasi envious. And so you can now be reported. Oh, it's overheard. You made, and to see this, and I think Santa Cruz. Think about what that school. When I was in high school, that was where you went. The free spirits, the stoners. Right. I think the stoners are still there. But just you went there to experiment, history of consciousness, and now it has devolved into this sort of this very, very controlled, and I don't want to say Stalinist, but. Yes, Stalinist.
It is very codified. Like I just last week saw with the Penn State codification, okay, of surveillance and how to report. And every category of possible offense is listed with the numbers to call. And they're encouraging people to report on fellow students, report on faculty, report on staff. This is madness. This has nothing whatever to do with intellectual development or education.
And the cultural appropriation.
Yes, and cultural appropriation.
That cultural appropriation is civilization.
Okay, that's what civilization is, of course, my God. If you've never been exposed to the history of the arts, then you don't understand how style and influence can cascade down over the centuries and is absorbed.
And stealing and
absolutely, from ancient Egypt on, for heaven's sakes.
Yes.
But you know nothing. If you've never been exposed to anything historical, then of course everything seems like theft. Okay, what are they talking about? This is absolute madness. Okay?
I was in Petra in Jordan. I went. I don't know if you can do that now, but you could take a bus from Eilat in Israel and go to Petra, and it's beautiful, but it's all, just stolen ideas, magnificent, but it's just a kind of tribute to cultural appropriation.
Oh my God, Christ was born into a period that was Hellenized, okay,
right,
in the ancient Near East, for heaven's sakes. So it's the Hellenistic period. They don't know anything about this. Oh, please. They never heard of ancient Greece. Okay, and so right, all of the great thinkers, okay, all of the serious artwork, okay, is out. Okay, so practically every class I give, I do a timeline on the board. Okay, that shows centuries and decades within centuries and so on. The kids have never seen a timeline. Okay, they've never been taught in that way. Okay,
you need a timeline.
Absolutely, and their sense is only of the present. In fact, I remember it was like 15 years ago now. I was giving a lecture for the history department at Yale it's actually about religion. And I was complaining about this presentism thing, where there's so much focus now on the present rather than knowledge of the past, which I think is the key to understanding everything about humanity is the distant past. And he said that is so true even in his field of history. He's the chairman of the department, and he said he was having trouble in the field of American history finding any specialists among grad students, right, and young faculty in a period before the Civil War. Okay, everything was Civil War and post-Civil War. He couldn't find it. He was having great difficulty finding anything earlier, okay, in terms of New England history and so on. And he said, and forget it, he said, about trying to find a young medievalist. Okay.
Right.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So as religion goes, also, it's another thing. Okay. I have said that in my experience, that you can encounter someone from the South, an evangelical Christian, okay, who dropped out of school at age 14 but studies the Bible. That person has a better sense of Western history, okay, than these graduates from Harvard and Yale, okay, because they're thinking in terms of these 2,000-year cycles, right? And a movie like The Ten Commandments, which I recommend to my students all the time, okay, the Cecil B. DeMille one, the 1956 one with Charlton Heston, okay, you know, and Yul Brynner and so on, that is a fantastic revelation of history. I mean, the Jews, okay, for heaven's sakes, at Passover, remember history, okay? So when religion goes, that's another thing that's taken history out the window.
Right. And so we need to give reason for hope.
Wait. We've got to make clear. We should make clear what our philosophy is. Okay, our philosophy is. She says equity feminist. Okay, I believe in equal opportunity. We are equal opportunity feminists. Okay? But we oppose special protections for women. Okay, right. True equality means that women cannot be treated as separate, more fragile beings. Okay, as if they're like little dolls.
Oh well, that's what's happened. It's I call the current feminism on campus fainting couch feminism, and it's suddenly that women, you know, are so hypersensitive if they even hear the slightest hint of an off-color joke, you know, they swoon like those ladies, 19th century ladies in their chaise. Yeah. I think they were swooning because of their corsets were too tight. That's another story. But anyway, I don't know why so that we are cultivating this new culture of fragility.
It is.
And
it's a neo-Victorian, and to me, you see, what it really is bourgeois, okay? It is coming from bourgeois principles or assumptions, whereas I call my feminism street smart feminism, okay? By which I mean that you on the street, okay, you have to be constantly aware, you have situational awareness of your environment, okay? And in my experience, women from working class backgrounds or from the country, rural women, okay, have a much more accurate sense of human reality, that the world is a dangerous place, but you are responsible for your own safety. You can't wait till after the fact something happens to you. Oh dear, oh mommy and daddy, okay, oh please comfort me, etc. Okay? I believe in being prepared at every moment, meaning also in the workplace. Okay? Like my philosophy is that there is no hostile workplace. Every workplace is hostile. Okay, all right. All right. At every moment of every day, every encounter that you have, okay, as a woman, okay, with anyone, another woman, a man, a boss, anyone, okay, that it is your responsibility, you know, to convey exactly how much you will tolerate and will not tolerate. You set the lines, okay? There is no like after the fact, you know, feeling, oh, I shouldn't have let him say that, okay? Oh, well, I'm afraid of getting fired. No. Your responsibility is to yourself, okay? To your dignity as a person, okay? Do not tolerate for one moment anyone who says something off color to you, because people are always feeling you out, trying to see, okay? Oh, is this someone I can embarrass or flirt with or whatever? And if you go like kind of a simpering kind of thing, even though you're inwardly distressed, you are simply making yourself into a patsy, okay? All right? So a woman has to take her own personal dignity, okay, at heart. This is the number one issue, okay? And stop farming out responsibility to everybody else in the universe.
Well, yeah, that's her Amazonian feminism. And you know, I recently reviewed The Second Sex of Simone de Beauvoir, and there's a lot that's problematic in that book, but I loved it when I was younger and read it, and that's really what her essential message. She has a lot of peculiar messages in there, but her essential message is exactly that: is kind of an existential responsibility for yourself and not copping out, and how we stop teaching that to students. And students used to love existentialism and to study it and to think about authenticity and responsibility. And if we could go back to that, because that did seem to. I was teaching philosophy for many years. Some of my most successful classes were an existential text and Simone de Beauvoir. But now it's this infantilization, and but I will say it's not. It's an unfortunate mix of infantilization and the bourgeois culture you described, and this hard line kind of a neo-Marxism that makes it possible for people, a lot of young women, if they're victims, then they have a place of privilege in this hierarchy of disadvantage, And so the more disadvantaged you are, the more prestige you have on campus.
Right.
And then you can tell anyone that disagrees with you to check their privilege and stop mansplaining and shut the F up, you know. So there's this is going on now, this intimidation and so forth. But it's this mix of fragility and fanaticism.
Well, I
what
mean,
are they? They're fragile. They're fragile thugs.
But the Marxism they're getting is just armchair leftism. Okay, these people are not authentic leftists. These people who are studying Lacan, Derrida, and Foucault. All right, just like they think that somehow coming out with some abstruse chain of incomprehensible argot. Okay, that is leftism. They're interrogating. They're speaking truth to power. These people are fat cats. Okay, the leading leftists of the Ivy League and the elite schools are multimillionaires. You know what they're paid, okay? These fake leftists and so on. They've played one school off after another, okay? Right? And they've hidden that, okay? They pretend such compassion, okay, for the poor. They've never lived among the poor. They know nothing about the working class. This is why I personally, okay, am a fan of Bernie Sanders, okay? So Bernie Sanders has the old, passionate, empathic style of leftism of my generation. Okay, he's even older than I am. Okay, and so on. Right, but that is the way the real leftists were. Okay, they had this passion. They didn't like to go to fundraisers and sip cocktails.
And the Democratic Party got its ideas from the labor movement, and now they get them from the academy.
That's right.
And so you see, it's a terrible situation because don't talk about where the Republicans are with our president. You've got Trump on the one hand, and then you have the Democratic Party. I'm worried about, whether they can run the country if they become more and more captive to the identity politics and these theories about unearned privilege. They're quite
political rhetoric is so divorced
and
from
at the
reality
end of Hillary's
now.
campaign, she started to run ads about intersectionality. And to appeal to, you're not winning millennial women. And I saw her take on this language of sort of college leftism. So we can't depend on the Democrats, but I'm not sure the Republicans are offering us salvation. So when I say that I'm looking for hope, is that the only place I find hope is in this. I'm still a registered Democrat, but I've been hanging out with conservatives for many years, and they always talk about the law of unintended consequences, and things are going to be even worse than you think. So I have a reverse law, which is the law of, I once called it the law of happy surprises, but someone said that's not serious, so I said the law of fortuitous reversals. Just when you when you least expect it, the Berlin Wall falls. Okay, this little Berlin Wall, it's got to fall, and maybe it'll happen when we least expect it. Something is going to come. Just some brilliant undergraduate is going to, a young, a 19-year-old Camille is going to come out and just tear it. This is what I'm waiting for. Okay.
Well, first of all, so we have to get the government out of the campuses. Okay, so the point is, I'm hoping, okay, that with that the Department of Education, okay, will absolutely cut the cord of all this compulsory Title IX training that's going on and this kind of oversight of the college campuses. I mean, it has to start there, and also. Trump has been making noises. No federal funding if you don't guarantee free speech rights on campus. All right, people might think that I, as a college teacher, might think, oh, that's terrible. No, okay, it's about time, okay, that the government threats have to do something to do with the intellectual substance, of college life, rather than all of this external frou-frou, okay, which has to do with the social lives of the students, about which the colleges should not, in the least, be concerned and be intruding.
Well, you're absolutely right. Those two things you said. One is the Department of Education sent out this letter in 2011, the Dear Colleague letter to all colleges, reading them the Riot Act about how they had to take claims of harassment seriously or they would lose their funding. The colleges overreacted, and people wonder if anybody graduated from college before 2012. They don't recognize what's happening on the campus today. They'll tell you. One of my sons didn't graduate that many years ago, and he said none of this was at Vanderbilt when he was there. Now Vanderbilt's become very carried away with identity politics and these punishing codes. it's because of that 2011 letter.
Right.
The Department of Education overplayed its hand. They sent out this directive which sanctioned censorship, terrified already risk-averse, meddlesome deans.
Right.
And then more and more money was put into these diversity, anti-harassment efforts.
Right.
And so now we have everything we've been talking about, the microaggression watches, but that was because of the government. Because before that, we've been arguing with these radicals for years, but you didn't hear from them. It was not something that was very prominent on campus, that people would just laugh at them. What the Department of Education did is sort of weaponized the sensibilities of the most neurotic people on campus,
Right.
the angriest people
Right.
in the Women's Studies Center, and then the other groups through the intersectional connection. They all work together. And so you get the most radical African-American kids, the most radical women, and the gay groups. So you get the most, and they have the government behind them.
Absolutely. You can make the most frivolous claim, okay, against a faculty member, okay,
Against
and
a
then
faculty
you have
member.
this. It's something out of Hawthorne, okay. All of a sudden,
All
you
of
get
a sudden.
Yeah, it's like the Salem witch trials, okay, and all notion of faculty rights has been thrown out the window.
And the government had no right to do that. So what they
Absolutely
have
not.
to do, what they do have a right to do, is in public universities, those universities are, the First Amendment is in full force. They do not have they have to live according to the United States Constitution, and they have a right to threaten support. And so what I want to see, and this is something we could work for, and students want to know what to do, is just as they have this whole little empire of harassment workshops, we need First Amendment workshops and free speech officers and a network of people to protect freedom, and that actually
Right.
would help education.
Right,
Because
right.
if you don't have freedom, you don't have thought.
Exactly right. I totally agree with that. And although, as I said, I'm a registered Democrat, I've objected for years to the way the feminist movement in the United States was hijacked by the Democratic Party. I mean, Gloria Steinem, has operated it simply as an arm of the party. Okay, and like I belonged to Planned Parenthood, for many years, and finally I began to realize that it too was just a covert operation, okay, for my own party. And I quit, and I will not give them a penny, after that. And so there's this kind of symbiosis also with the Manhattan media, between the Gloria Steinem Democratic Party and so on. So you're getting all this manipulation of news and this turning of issues toward this is about women when it's really about the life of the party. So this is one of the things I found most unpalatable about Hillary Clinton's candidacy. Okay, is this like the crypto. The feminist socialites, okay, that's the sort of the DC Manhattan party scene, okay, of the media, where feminism has become just kind of like a brand name, a little, a diamond-studded badge, okay, that you're wearing, and so on, okay, and yet they like speak in terms of the horrors that women are suffering, and so I'm afraid that the Gloria Steinem feminist establishment, okay, is to me absolutely corrupt to its heart, okay. Absolutely corrupt, right? And
declaring
she's
a war on
glamorizing
women. What war?
What war on women? There's no war on women.
Is there a society? Maybe there is, where women are freer and have more opportunities in the United States.
Absolutely condescending, okay, to allow these major issues about women, okay, to be used and abused.
And to tell this, and this is what makes me mad. And in my classrooms, I would see more and more young women, because the young men are disappearing on campus, as we know. And there they were, poised to take on the world in ways that women in the past did not have possibility, and women in many parts of the world. And yet that was just the moment where in their women's studies classes, their English classes, they would be told that the world was rigged against them. No. That they, don't think about going into the sciences. It's all set up.
You're a victim.
And it wasn't. No. And it was, and I tried out when I was writing Who Stole Feminism. I wanted to make sure I wasn't out of touch with 20-year-olds, so I would try out my ideas. At the time, it was a lot of working class young women at Clark University, and they agreed with me and cheered me on. So I still try to go back. I go to the campus a lot to talk to students and make sure I'm, not, missing something. But that gives me hope that they're still there. They on the campus. They don't know. The problem is right now they hardly know that people like you and I exist.
Right.
We've been edited out of the curriculum, and us and several other freedom feminists, Amazonian style, not in the curriculum. So they have to find us. And
well, fortunately, the web,
with the web
there,
they do.
and so there are videos and
groups like the
interviews.
Independent Women's Forum, just
Yeah,
to know
that's
there's
right.
an organization that is about independence, about agency, and not about constantly trying to find ways in which the system is rigged against us. And you would think they would get tired of it. They never get tired of it. As things get better for women, the more indignant and angry
absolutely.
they are.
Isn't it bizarre? Yeah, but I mean, so free speech was really a principle of my generation of the 1960s. When I entered college in the fall of 1968, or the free speech movement, excuse me, 1964, sorry, the free speech movement had just happened at the University of California at Berkeley, which makes all the more tragic, of course, the horrible events that occurred at Berkeley, which is almost like Kristallnacht. Would you believe this? At the sacred ground of the free speech movement. And that was a period when Lenny Bruce, was getting arrested for for offensive speech and so on. So free speech was absolutely at the heart of the 60s counterculture.
And the comedians like
And
Mort Saul.
Yes,
And
you went out of your way to give offense.
Right.
In fact, the first influence on me was Oscar Wilde. I had stumbled on a book of Oscar Wilde's epigrams when I was like 14 years old in a secondhand bookstore in Syracuse, and Oscar Wilde went out of his way to be offensive against Victorian philanthropy, Victorian pieties,
Oh, do
etc.
we need him today?
Yeah,
We need a young Oscar Wilde. If you're out there, we're waiting for you.
This is the way gay.
And it's such a rich, it'd be so much to write about.
But gay men used to talk like this, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Gay men have become totally co-opted, by democratic politics apparently, now, They just spout feminist rhetoric, at a drop of a hat, and so on. But gay men, in my experience in college and grad school, were absolutely fearless, They would make jokes that you would cringe, Jokes about people in wheelchairs, people with crutches. I mean, you wouldn't believe what gay men would say, So there was like I learned this power, the power of offensiveness, from gay men, and I want gay men to go back and recover that, So a little bit of it sneaking back, with they're starting to be interested again in like Joan Crawford and Betty Davis. There's a new thing about their feud, etc. They're horribly made.
They turned it into a little feminist.
Yes, as usual, you got. I could
we're
only
getting
watch
that
one
a
episode.
lot.
Nevertheless, Betty Davis and Joan Crawford, were admired by gay men, for their absolutely incredible, they're like they had flamethrower tongues, etc.
Yeah.
So maybe there's now a thirst again, for authentic speech.
There has to be, and Joan Rivers.
Oh, Joan Rivers was one of my heroines.
Me too.
Oh,
what a
my
loss! And she would joke about anything.
Anything.
And she explained that and she would explain, and Mel Brooks has said this too. It comes out of a Jewish tradition of terrible suffering and injustice, but learning that you could diffuse it of power. And as long as it was done, as Mel Brooks said, if you got love, say what you want. He had that, and he made these wonderful movies. You couldn't show his movies today on campus without a committee being alarmed. And
Joan Rivers joked about her husband's suicide. I mean, there was absolutely nothing, off
Nothing.
Off target for her. Oh, she was amazing. Yeah, she was one of my primary. In fact, I was called the academic Joan Rivers when I first arrived. On the scene. Yeah, okay.
And she I was on her show because she liked, for whatever reason, she liked the War Against Boys. And she interviewed me. I have it somewhere where I was.
Well, she admires strong-spoken women.
Yeah, she likes outspoken women.
But now, Jerry Seinfeld says he won't appear on campus anymore. There were several comedians who said they won't because they said there's no sense of humor anymore. Humor comes from violation of taboos. This goes all the way back. To Aristophanes, the period of ancient Greece. And if you can't have, if taboos now have to be protected, rather than exposed, then the whole dynamic, the whole energy dynamic in culture is gone.
It's gone so far on the campus that people like John McWhorter, the linguist at Columbia University, he thinks that it's actually a new religion, that it has the fierceness and the passion, and you've got the sinner, who's the privileged white male on campus, and then you have this sort of hierarchy of purity out of almost Dante-esque when it comes to categorizing the sinners. And do you think that the demise of religion is that people are now replacing it?
Absolutely. I've said that for years. I've been writing about that for years. I've said that people must have religion. I'm an atheist, but I believe in, that religion structures are the way we see the world and the universe, and that all of the great world religions, okay, should be the true core curriculum. Of all education worldwide, I've been saying this, for decades. Right? Everyone should know, the basic precepts and the rituals and the texts and the shrines and the iconography from Judeo-Christianity, of Hinduism, of Buddhism, okay, and of Islam, okay, the great world religions should be known to everyone. Because if you don't do that, this is what you get. Okay, you get a religion of the state. You get a religion with this horrible, rancid emotionalism.
Well, you get a cult, and there's people that were.
It's like yes, cultic.
My boys were raised in Judaism, one which was a religious day school, and they understand, even though I don't know that either of them are that religious, they know what a great religion is. And so if someone came to them with some cheap imitation, they wouldn't be tempted. So they're not going to become Scientologists or join some cult. But on the campus, to me, it looks as though Scientologists have taken over. Yeah. Only in this case, they're called intersectional theorists. And they're teaching it to students. I don't know what percentage of the students take it seriously, but a small percentage maybe, but it matters because it's a lot of people. 10 to 20% of young women are absolutely mesmerized and become devout. Well, and they're rooting out sinners.
Well, look at the reaction to an election. They lost an election. An election. All of a sudden, hysteria, crying, weeping, okay, and so on. And announcements from the
wailing. My friend called her son at Yale, and he held up the phone. You could hear wailing and screaming the night.
Yeah. Oh, God. I mean, that suggests something. There's a disproportion.
Something is amiss.
All right. The sense of life is right. It was an election. Okay, so regroup. Okay, analyze what your faults were. Okay, and move on now to the next election. Okay, but all this going on, this caterwauling and this carrying on. Yes, there's something deeply wrong. Okay, in the American psyche that would permit this. Okay.
Yeah. Well, as you said, lack of knowledge that.
Lack of structure, lack of a sense of history.
A sense of history.
I mean, for heaven's sakes, Shelley's sonnet, Ozymandias, is all about like a fallen colossus of the ancient Egyptian pharaoh, okay? And nothing is left, just the sands of time in the future. That is what you get from art, okay, all right? It's what you get from religion, a sense of perspective, a sense of time and space, okay, and so on. So election happened, it was like Tiny with a tweezer, okay, it's like Tiny.
Recently, the way I interviewed you at AEI, I interviewed the philosopher Roger Scruton, and he was pointing out that one of the important purposes of education is to teach a young person to appreciate beauty. And this was the point of education for centuries. And then you would, if you learn enough about art or poetry or music, and it opens up this world of brilliance and beauty. And he said, we're closing it off. We're closing this off, and because of the lack of education, and then this focus on ugliness and focus on angry issues or these narrow, pointless issues, we're not giving this to. So
absolutely.
Just as you say, not knowing the history, there's an inability to put things in perspective, and not having these outlets to understand great works of.
But it's worse than that. The way they teach art now is that all art equals ideology.
It's identity politics.
That there is no art, okay, without an ideological power play that happened before. It's that all art is the product of a small power group, okay, that is directed against another group, okay. Right. So it's insane, okay, absolutely insane. It is a total distortion of Marxism because there are great Marxist works of scholarship that influenced me. Arnold Hauser's great books.
Sometimes I miss the Marxists.
Yeah.
Because
true Marxism.
They were serious intellectuals.
And they were historicists. They had a sense of history.
They have the only philosophers I could find who had written great attacks on intersectionality were the Marxists. You couldn't find the liberals. I don't know where the liberal, where is Martha Nussbaum or I don't know, these liberal professors at Harvard University. when this fanatical philosophy is taking over universities.
Well, in the 1970s began all this deconstruction business. So you get a text in front of you, a literary text or an artwork, okay, and you destroy it. You show all the ways, okay, that it's lying, all the ways it's full of fictions, all the ways that it can't be trusted, okay.
Right.
So you go around, you find like racism and sexism and homophobia, etc.
So you're above it.
Yes, you're superior to it. The critic is superior to the great work of art. Give me a break. So young people have no sense of appreciation. Now, I'm Italian, okay, so we believe in the beauty and grandeur of art, okay. So I try to make students, okay, appreciate and admire, okay, the artwork. That is out of fashion. No one is being taught to teach like that, okay. Right. You're being taught to show how sophisticated you are as a critic, okay, by slashing the thing to ribbons, okay. And then we wonder why the young people have nothing. They have nothing to believe in, okay. They know nothing, and they have nothing to have faith in. Nothing.
Well, I don't want to say all of them because I do hear from the groups on the campus that are now trying to find their way back to reality because they've taken this detour into madness. And
but will they go into college teaching though? That's the thing. I hear from so many of them, okay, that right. They don't want. They feel that there's no future for them, okay. That there's it's a landscape that's a desert, okay, a wasteland in college teaching. The colleges will not be taken back until we get young people who are bold enough to make their way through upward in the profession.
Well, I think the colleges are probably going to fade because they're going to be, there's this exponential growth in administration.
Yes.
Fewer and fewer professors.
Poisonous.
I think it's just going to turn into one long, workshop on date rape, and that's it. Yes. And so there, on the fringes, there might be time for an English class or something, but who's going to want to pay $300,000 to send Junior to be?
Yeah, but the number one factor about universities, and colleges in the U.S. over the past 30 years is this overgrowth, this parasitic overgrowth, okay, of these administrators whose salaries are larger than that of the faculty, who have this arrogant master race kind of attitude, okay, toward things, right? And now you have people who are running the colleges and universities who never had any past experience in teaching, okay, and they have no sense of academe, right? And also tenure is being abolished, okay. I was always opposed to that. I thought, why should teachers have a lifetime contract and other professions don't? But the point is, as the tenure has shrunk, like my university no longer offers it, and so on. You're getting more and more long-term contracts, and you're getting much more adjunct teaching. Okay, and there's a whole oppressed class.
Oh, they're so oppressed, and they can't say anything. Yeah. We probably have to start wrapping this up. So I will just say that someone has called our universities islands of repression in a sea of freedom. And
well put.
We are on campuses urging rebellion among the islanders, and I think it will come. I'm waiting.
Okay.
I hope sooner rather than later.
All right.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.